Yes, welcome. Edith is going to get you involved in a poll as we wait for the webinar to start.
This is just to get all of you warmed up. As we go along tonight, we're going to be asking different questions in an actual poll format. For right now, to start off, we're just going to use the Q&A, which you'll also maybe have need for later. So get yourself familiar, but find it in your bottom menu. It might be under More. It might be in its own like labeled area, depending on how much of your screen you see. But find that and go to that open question, ask a question part, and put in your response of your favorite electric machine. What's going on in your life? And as you're, Ford Lightning, nice. Milwaukee Yard Tools, calling out Milwaukee, nice. I like it. I have some other friends, what is it? They have a different one that they really like. I forget which it is, but it's not Milwaukee. So there's some good brands out there. All right, thanks for getting us started, Michael. Anybody else can chime in. We want to hear. Paula, coffee maker, excellent. My husband is in full alignment with you. Belinda, induction stove, nice. That would be what I go for, and I love how easy it is to clean. Heated mattress pad. I think that's the first time I've heard that answer from somebody. Nice. I imagine you've been getting a lot of use out of it lately, Barbara. All right, more folks getting in there, finding the Q&A. Good job. Eli, fridge, an essential. Going old school there. Great. Nice to see these rolling in as people are starting to join us. It means we got some live active people out there too, which is great. We're going to count on that. All right, if you just joined us, follow this prompt on the slide and find your way over to Q&A and put in your answer of your favorite electric machine. Could be a machine of any size, right? If you see some of the ones that are in there, we've got everything from a coffee maker up to a Ford 150 Lightning. So big range. Go ahead and put yours in there. The Q&A, if that's not something you're familiar with, you'll find it on the bottom of your little menu where there's some tools. And if it's not labeled as its own standalone item, you'll find it under the one that says More with the 3 little dots. And then just enter it like you are asking a question. In this case, you're answering it, but we're just using it that way right now. All right, an anonymous attendee, toaster. I love a good slice of toast. Eric Grunbaum, hi, Eric. Air to water heat pump. You're going to the fringe. Early adopter, nice. Another anonymous, electric tea kettle. These are all like super handy to us New Englanders at this time of year. Awesome, keep them coming in, warm up your fingers. If you're wondering, does she really want me to answer this? The answer is yes, I do want you to answer it. I want to hear from you. We're gonna get started in just a moment, so keep them coming in. All right, so far, a lot of our favorites seem to be in the kitchen. We got tea kettle, fridge, toaster, coffee maker, induction stove, plug-in lawnmower, yes. House batteries, excellent. Excellent, love to see it. All right, I think if you're just coming in and you're seeing this question, we're going to leave it up for just a second here. I'm going to turn it over to Nancy, who's going to do a little welcome for us, and I'm going to toggle between our opening slide and this one in case you're still thinking and making your way over to the Q&A.
So welcome, attendees. Welcome, everyone. What an appropriately frigid evening for gathering around the glow of a screen and planning for greener and warmer homes. Tonight's webinar is produced by Seafree and Metro West Climate Solutions and co-sponsored by Green Newton and Energize Wayland. As a subcommittee of Lincoln Green Energy, Seafree focuses on providing residents with resources and guidance for reducing fossil fuel emissions and meeting our Commonwealth's climate goals for 2030, 40, and 50. My name is Nancy Selvage, and I am one of a dozen Sea-Free members. Metro West Climate Solutions mission is to inspire healthy, sustainable communities by hosting programs that provide knowledge and tools for enabling solutions to the climate crisis. A recording of tonight's webinar will join 50 other excellent event recordings on the websites of Sea-Free's Getting to Zero series and on Metro West Climate Solutions past programs page. Joel Angelillo and Michael Moody have been valuable partners in planning this program, and Jeff Blum's technical expertise has brought us all together. There will be a Q&A following Edith's presentation, and please type in your questions using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Joel Angelillo of Metro West Climate Solutions will field and present the questions. As a recent graduate of Edith's Rewiring America Electric Coach course, I'm very excited to be introducing one of her engaging and entertaining presentations. As you will soon witness, Edith brings a behavioral lens to energy transition, specializing in making building science and energy efficiency topics accessible and actionable. Her hands-on experience includes transforming two 100-year-old three-family buildings in Boston into high-performance homes on the path to full decarbonization. Edith is a training manager and decarbonization advisor at Abode Energy, and she is the lead trainer for Rewiring America's Electric Coach course, where she has so far built a nationwide team of 1,500 volunteer coaches. Previously, Edith volunteered with Mothers Out Front, advancing local and statewide climate initiatives. She holds a master's in public administration from Harvard's Kennedy School and a BA in psychology from the University of Illinois. And now, please welcome again, Edith.
Thank you, Nancy. That is a very kind introduction, and glad to have continuing partnership with students from the Electric Coach course. I'm going to jump in to just a quick word about Abode. Abode Energy Management is who I work for, and we have been involved in all kinds of different pathways for decarbonizing homes, running pilots and studies, and backing up programs to accelerate residential decarbonization across New England. We're primarily in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island with statewide programs and a number of cities and towns and municipal light plants and other kinds of partnerships like our one with Rewiring America. So Abode, is backing up a lot of what I'm sharing with you and in the course with some on-the-ground experience with decarbonizing in a challenging environment that we have here in New England. We have a cold climate. We have high electricity costs and cheaper gas, and we have a lot of really old homes. So putting all those together can make the pathway for decarbonization a little complicated and hard to figure out where to go next. So tonight, I hope to really help you get a little more clarity and ready to move through that. And that's some of what we mean by that behavioral lens I try to bring to this. It's like real humans have to make this happen. It's not just about the technology. We have the technology to do all of this. Figuring out when and how and what matches your home is where a lot of us get stuck. So we're going to talk about the problem with emergency replacements, which is where we end up far too often, how to make an electrification plan, and you'll get a little bit of time to start that, and sharing some helpful supports as you keep moving down that path. I imagine a lot of folks who are on this call have already done some stuff, and hopefully you'll be more clear about what you're going to do next after this. We're going to start off with a poll. We're going to do a few polls across the way here. So I'm going to queue up this slide like that. And then Jeff, our text tech wizard, is going to put up that poll. And I think it's up right now. You can see it. This is another chance for you to get your fingers ready. And we want to know which major piece of equipment you'll do next. And maybe you don't know, but find one of these answers. All right. Oh, they're flying in now. Okay, we're fairly evenly distributed. Yeah. Okay. Right now, it looks like the nose won, which is like, I have an idea. I'm feeling the pressure, but it's not like, you know, ready to go. So that's perfect. I hope that you will find yourself in a better place, closer to seeing the pathway for you to get to, yes, I have everything I need and I'm just waiting to press go. So let's talk about the big picture. In Massachusetts, the vast majority of our energy use inside homes comes from two things: space heating, making our air warmer. You can see here in the little chart, making our air warmer takes way more energy around here than making it cooler. 59% of our household energy use goes to keeping warm, and 16% goes to having hot water to use all around the house. So recent data, and things have just really started to change with the heat pump rates. With the new heat pump rates that went into effect on November 1st, a recent study shows that 82% of homes who make the switch to a heat pump could save on average $687 each winter. So that is news, and that is different, because for a long time in Massachusetts, if you had a pretty well insulated house and a decent gas furnace and you added heat pumps, it wasn't necessarily a money saver. You might increase comfort, you might reduce climate emissions and pollution, but you weren't necessarily going to save money. And some of that looks different, and we're going to dig into that in a little bit. So I've got this pie chart here, and underneath it is a car, because it does not address transportation. And transportation is a huge part of our individual energy use in Massachusetts. Now, I live in the city of Boston, so mine is a little smaller, and I use walking and biking and public transportation quite a bit. But the farther out you are from being able to do those things, a car might easily be your biggest or equal to heating in your energy use. So keep that in mind as we move ahead. Because what we know is that the decisions you make have a lot of power. People can say, what does it matter what I do? But I'm going to tell you, it matters what you do. 5 kitchen table decisions in your hands are responsible for about 42% of all of the US climate pollution. Now, that includes like tracing back the pollution that comes from our grid. And nationally, homeowners or households have a lot to do with that. 5 decisions: how we drive, how we heat, how we cool, how we heat our water, and how we cook are those big 5. And that's probably not news to a lot of people on this call. You know, those are the things that cause climate pollution, but we get stuck, even if we know there are good options out here. And then if you're stuck for long enough, you get an emergency, and now you have to act. And that is not such a great time to act. So let's just find out. What do you think? Have you ever experienced a major system failure in your home that surprised you, created an emergency? I think, yeah, I missed adding the word surprise to this poll question. Of course, we've all had systems failures of some sort or another, but we want to know about the ones that like caught you off guard, and you woke up and you're like, no hot water, or my furnace went out. Now, what does that look like? All right, pick your answer. Okay. Let's see how this one comes out. Oh, they're popping in here. Nice. All right. So an emergency replacement, it looks like a little more than a third of you haven't had one. Good for you, but you're worried about it. And a lot of you have gone through some of those more pressured decisions. You are like everybody else. About 70% of equipment replacements are emergencies. They come as a surprise and they need a response now. Heating, cooling, and hot water are usually the big ones for that, but nobody wants to have their refrigerator conk out on them or a laundry machine. We usually have a little bit more time if one of those happens, but especially when it's those big ones, and I'll throw in car. So for car, heating, cooling, and hot water, it gets urgent when that happens. And what that often means is we go to what's familiar, or we go to what our old installer of whatever kind or mechanic recommends, or what they're comfortable with, or what they have like right now and ready for you on the truck. I can be there tomorrow. And then that's usually fossil fuels. And then that means that your clock is starting over. Nancy talked about our state goals across the Commonwealth for 2030, 2040, 2050. And, you restart the clock back at 0 years with a new piece of fossil fuel equipment. Some of them are going to last until 2050 at this point, if they're well cared for some of those longer live ones. And then we're stuck. That thing is going to continue to create that climate pollution for us, our neighbors, and all across the globe for a long time. So there's a real missed opportunity when we end up, because of urgency, because we need something now, choose a fossil fuel again. If we are proactive planners, and it looks like some of you already are, good for you, then you can schedule replacements to times when installers tend to be available. Good luck trying to install an air conditioner in the middle of the summer. Those people don't want to do new installations in July. They're doing emergency calls and helping people whose existing systems are misbehaving. Same thing in the winter for heating systems. You want to try and be in the shoulder seasons when they're more available and they may have more time to spend with you and better prices to offer. Or when you can plan your electrician coming and pre-wiring for a couple of things you're planning, because electricians can be hard to get on site and expensive. Better to, if you can swing it, have them do a few things all together. This is why we want to move out of emergency replacements, and we want to, before it dies, electrify. Not when it dies. I just told you, when it dies is a very hard time to electrify. You got to before it dies. Now, as New Englanders, we might be on that frugal side and want to get every last ounce of operation out of a piece of equipment. But for those four, cars, heating, cooling, and water heating, we often don't have the luxury of making a good decision if one of those surprises us by dying. So we want to, before it dies, electrify. This is our key phrase. If you leave with only one thing tonight, I hope this is the phrase that is the headline in your mind. So what do we need to do that? We need to know what's likely to go next. So here's our next poll, and Jeff's going to pop it up there. Equipment age knowledge. Do you know the age of the major equipment in your home? All of it? Most of it? Some of it? Hold my beer, I need to go check. Tell me. All right. It looks like many of you are in pretty good shape. That's great. So you are going to be ready to move into some prioritization a little bit if you already know the equipment age of some of your stuff. If not, I'm going to give you some information that's going to help you plan. Okay. So we know it's going to break, or you want to reduce our energy bills. Some parts of our home just aren't comfortable. You want to do your part for a healthier and safer future, or you're worried about specifically your own family's health and comfort. Or lots of homes around here do not have central air conditioning, and summers are getting hotter. I used to not need it. I am a big proponent of having it in the summer now because our summers are getting hotter and we're losing that nighttime cooling that lets us kind of reset for the next day. So there's a lot of reasons to make the change and to plan for it. Here's my next phrase for you: get electric next. And when you talk about it with your friends and family, this is like the easiest thing of just plan for the next thing to be electric. And even if it's already electric, you might get better electric next. This is a story from my own life. A few years back, I was hosting my side of the family, and we were all out on Cape Cod. It was a typical Cape Cod rental. We had to take all of our own sheets, all of our own towels, all of that stuff. And we came back with all of that, plus all of our clothes in need of some washing. And our washer conked out. Now, it was an emergency replacement, but it was an emergency replacement gone right because we'd done our homework. We'd done a little bit of planning. We were not surprised by this, and we were trying to get every last ounce out of that thing. But we knew we were going to get an Energy Star. We knew we were going to get a front loader. We'd read consumer reports, and we knew some of the appliance stores that carried the models that we had. So we had everything we needed to like press go, and we figured, within a couple of days, replacing the laundry machine would be an acceptable time frame. 9 piles of laundry sitting on the floor in the meantime wasn't great, but even at that, it was still totally workable. And we got so much better with our next electric upgrade machine. It used less water, less energy. We could do larger loads. Things got cleaner faster. The extra high spin means we have to spend less time and energy drying, and it's gentler on clothes. We got so much when we got the new piece of equipment. Love it. You could see the difference on our water bill and our electric bill when that machine went in. Some of that is accentuated because we share laundry across all 3 apartments where I live, but it was totally noticeable. Here's another one. To get electric next, you might also get more efficiency. One of my colleagues at Abode, his name is Mike, had an electric heat pump water heater, which are very inefficient. A new heat pump water heater, which uses electricity more efficiently, is 2 to 4 times more efficient. And he thought, if I'm saving all that electricity and I used it instead to drive my car, how far could I go? People, look at this. He is like starting way in the like high reaches of Maine and ending in Bar Harbor after circumnavigating the country, including going all the way out to Key West and back on 1 year's worth of energy saved by switching from an electric water heater to a heat pump water heater. Amazing. I don't know. I can see those numbers. I don't know. You can probably see it. Something like almost 10,000 miles he could drive. So we can get a lot of efficiency by making that switch. And here's about those rates. On this slide, we see the impact of the new heat pump rates that are being offered. Now, this example is for a house in Boston. So Eversource is the utility, and their heat pump rate is a few cents better than National Grid's. I don't know why they were allowed to do separate rates, but Eversource's is a little better if you're in their territory. So last year, this house, without the heat pump rate and gas at $2.45 a therm, would have cost about $1,700 to heat for the season. And if they switched to a heat pump and they were on the Boston Municipal Aggregation, which I think many of you are in towns that also have that. In Boston, it's about 1 cent less than the regular Eversource rate. Then they would have been spending more. You see there in the heating season and broken down by month, would be spending more, up to $5,000 more to make that heat pump change because electricity is expensive and gas is cheaper. But it was going to save 1.1 to 1.5 tons of climate pollution. Now, same house. Oh, and that's those little 6 things. Those are 6 solar panels. You'd have to install 6 solar panels to make up for that increased electricity use if they wanted to keep their bill neutral. It would take 6 new panels to cover what the heat pump was using. Now go to this year. On the right, then we have same house, but we've got, even with gas at a little bit cheaper than it was last year, with the new heat pump rate taking the electricity rate for kilowatt hours down to 25 cents instead of 32 for last year. Now homes might be saving money or only having a little bit more, and maybe only needing like half a panel if you could install half a panel to cover that increased electricity rate. Now, this is based on the average size house of 1,800 square feet in Massachusetts and assumes that the house has been weatherized by Mass Save. In either of these years, if the house wasn't weatherized by Mass Save, and at the same time that they did this heat pump and they were getting their incentive, they were also doing a bit of air sealing and weatherization at low or no cost with Mass Save, then you're looking at making up that, it's going to be better. And the house would maybe, I think even last year, erase most of, perhaps all, depending on how poorly performing the house was before. So this is, the new heat pump rates are really making a difference. We're glad we have them. They started November 1st and they go for 6 months of the year. Let's look at an oil house, because if you've been following this, you know that people who heat with oil usually do a little better, because oil is both more expensive and dirtier for the pollution side. So, but let's just go with the heat pump rate in place this year. Those folks would generally be looking at saving $1,000 in the heating season, or maybe paying about $630 more, maybe needing one panel to make up that difference. And that's because oil is a little cheaper this winter. If we go back to the winter of 23-24, oil was running at $4.35 a gallon. And if that were the price this year with the heat pump rates, these people would just be saving money all day long, every month of the heating season, even if they're already weatherized. So my point here is that if you've been sitting on the fence thinking about like, budget's tight, take a new look, because the heat pump rates are making a difference. All right. That's my advertisement for that. Let's move on. Here's drafting your 5-year plan. Let's go to another poll. Which upgrade feels most urgent? A lot of you have already done some homework, and I'm curious which of these things is next up on your list if you've formed your list. All right, they're coming in. All right, a lot of people looking at heating and cooling, followed by an induction range. Most people, I don't think I've talked to anybody who's gotten an induction range and says, "Oh, I really miss my gas stove." There's a period of adjustment for sure, but once you get the hang of it, I think people generally really like it. Heating and cooling, we're talking about heat pumps there. Not sure. Some folks are going for a water heater. Well, let's look at the typical lifespans of these things. All right, here's your first step in your homework. A lot of you know how old your equipment is. Do you know how much time it has left? This slide will tell you how much time it has left. Up at the top, I have water heaters in red, just because they tend to have the shortest lifespans. And, if you, I don't know if everybody on this call is on Boston or like MWRA water, but if you're on a private well or something else and your water is more minerally, that's when you tend to the shorter end of these time frames for water heaters. Electric water heaters, our grid is about half or so clean in Massachusetts now, and we just got that new hydropower coming in from Canada that started arriving, I think, last week. And our wind farms are maybe going to get back on track with recent court rulings. So it's going to get cleaner, but it's just that electric water heaters are so efficient, like we talked about with Mike's change, that swapping them into a heat pump is a good one. Going down this list, we see some of our secondary home appliances. I've got the vehicle marked in orange, just because when we talk about electrification at our at a household level, we sometimes don't think about transportation, and it can be a big part of our household energy use and our climate pollution. I've got the electric or the gas or electric range in purple because if you are on gas, it's not a big climate win because they don't use that much gas or fossil fuels. But if you do have one, they create a lot of indoor air pollution. And you've probably seen all the studies about the impact that has on respiratory health. And that, like, they just give off carcinogens. Ugh. Okay, so good thing to have on your list. And then furnaces and boilers, just because they are one of those huge things. 59% of our household energy use inside the home is coming from these things. So making that switch is a good one. It's a more complicated one. This equipment is longer lived, generally 15 to 20 years. You might get 30 out of a solid boiler that's been taken care of. But we make big gains in reducing our climate pollution and can often really increase our comfort when we're adding this equipment. But just age is not the only thing we want to be thinking about. There's a whole bunch of other things that matter to you and matter where we are that interlace with this. So you next need to prioritize your concerns, constraints, and realities. We have here the 5 C's. This is a framework from Rewiring America. In addition to the age of that equipment, you might have comfort concerns, like the air in here is so dry in the winter and our temperature fluctuates because we have this furnace that's oversized and it blasts on hot air and then turns off until it drifts down and it's too cold and then it blasts on again and it's just not comfortable because our temperature is always doing this. Or you want more control over how things work, when they're working, maybe your own energy supply, like with solar panels, which has not been on any of our lists yet. What's going on in your community? What's going on with our climate? And costs is certainly a concern for pretty much everybody. So our local incentive programs, Mass Save, and even the things that are happening from the municipal light plants are some of the best in the country. And we're really lucky to have them. And they are there and can support us a lot more. And our fuel cost differences, which are always bouncing around a little bit, make a difference too. So if you've done that homework, you know how old stuff is, and you know when you might be approaching end of life for those systems, and you know what's important to you, now you're ready to do your plan. Because those 2 steps of homework are that first column of assess and prioritize. Next up, leverage Mass Save. If you are eligible, use it. You've been paying into it. And it's a key support for our state goals. And if you want to see it stick around, call your rep and senator, because there are people who are saying that we shouldn't be doing as much of that stuff. If you have not done weatherization, whether that's air sealing or insulation, or you did it a long time ago, do it again. You can get a home energy assessment every 2 years. So if your last big lighting upgrade was still those compact fluorescent light bulbs, they'll help you get to LEDs too. But check into Mass Save. Sometimes for some of the incentives, you have to have the home energy audit as a first step, and it's free to you. So if you haven't done it in a while, I suggest dipping back into it. You might learn new things. You might be eligible for new things. And we should definitely be using it. And then after that, then you can do strategic scheduling. Use those shoulder seasons. If you're looking at heating and cooling, which a lot of you are, fall and spring, is when you want to try and time your replacements. Your installers are like going to be more excited to talk to you then. You're going to get that better attention and maybe better pricing if you're catching them in those seasons versus an emergency in the middle of winter or in the heat of summer. So take advantage of that and bundling your work with your electrician if you can do it. And then review and revise. We're talking about this as a 5-year plan, but really for a lot of you, it's going to be a lot more than a 5-year plan. You might be doing this for 5, 10, or 15 years. I started in our house. We bought it almost 20 years ago. And we've been doing stuff all along. And each time, things like replacing that laundry machine or a refrigerator with the new Energy Star ones are part of this too, and are just going to make your home perform better and use energy more wisely. So you can revisit it. Maybe something happened that means that something that you thought was in okay condition last year kind of has to move up the list this year. So revisit it from time to time. But these are your basic steps. So from here tonight, I want you to finish making a draft plan. And then I want you to get help. There's a lot of help. I was talking about Mass Save. You can get that home energy assessment. You can get a coach. I'm going to talk about that more in a second. You should get to know your options. We have some wonderful resources for exploring some newer technologies that maybe you haven't seen in operation before. You didn't grow up with. Well, you can learn about them through some good options. And then get ready to take action. I want you to leave this webinar with one clear next step. Like, I know what I am doing next. Identifying that next step. And if you can go a little bit further, you get off this webinar and you like go back out to whoever else is in your household, tell them what the next step is. Make a public announcement about it. Put it on your calendar. Look up the phone number of the installer you want to talk to first, but like get clear on your next step and then try and announce it or schedule it or set yourself up to take action on that. All right, that's how you're going to do it. Some of you, I'm sure, have already been through a bunch of this. I want to share with you some resources. Clean Energy Lives Here. This is a website that is hosted by the Mass CEC, the Clean Energy Center, which has the job of getting the state ready with workforce, with research, with building the industry that we need for electrification. And one of the things they have is the Clean Energy Lives Here website, where they go through each of the options you can do in a household by equipment and some by strategies to explain what it is, what it might cost, some homeowner stories, some examples of how it works, and links to additional resources. There's some great materials there. I urge you to check it out. I'm going to go through some of the rest of these. But first, just a little bit, because weatherization, it's far sexier than most people think. Most of our homes around here in New England started out like this lowly paper coffee cup. Sheathing on the outside of a wood frame, single pane windows indoors that aren't insulated without weather stripping, to uninsulated basements with rim joists that just let the air whoosh in, and attics that let it escape or heat up. Not because there were nefarious builders out there when all of our homes were built, but because that was the state of the art for our building techniques and the materials. But now we have better techniques and we have better materials, and we have ways to retrofit our beloved older homes and make them more like this efficient travel mug, right? So we want to stop the leakage of air leaving the house that we've already paid to heat or cool. We want to stop that air being replaced with infiltration from air from the outside. And if that air is coming in, as it most often does, through our basements or down from the attic, it might be bringing with it dust, mold, dead bugs, live bugs, all kinds of things we don't want in our house. And then we add insulation once we've done the air sealing to stop leakage and infiltration. Then we add the insulation. If many of you have been owning your home for a very long time, you might have owned it in the era when insulation was the main thing we thought we could do for our homes. But we now understand the importance of air sealing and where to put it. If you do this weatherization with Mass Save, we typically lower the energy costs in a house by 12 to 18%. Nothing to sneeze at. And that is always going to make your current, and especially your next piece of heating and cooling equipment perform better, because it's not going to have to work as hard. And it might also mean that you can put in smaller equipment. I was at a site visit at a triple decker just like 2 weeks ago, and we were looking at the size of the equipment that was originally installed in the home. It was like, oh, let's see, they had radiators, so it was a boiler that had about a 90,000 BTUs per hour capacity for each floor. So 180,000 BTUs available in that house per hour when all of them would be working. They've done mass save insulation air sealing, and they did a little extra in their roof because they also needed to get a new roof at the time. So they said, like, now's the time. That roof could last 30 years. We're going to like get something good in there that will last for 50 or more years. So they did that. And the new heat pumps that they put in were 24,000 to 30,000 BTUs of capacity for the different floors. So in an old home that's had some modern treatment, they were able to reduce the whole building's demand with a heat pump to be about a third of what was originally installed. So some of that is because the old stuff was oversized and the new stuff is right sized. But if you can buy smaller equipment, that's better. It doesn't have to work as hard when it's well matched. So, and little additions make up a real impact over time. If you've had your house for a while, if you're going to have your house for a while, if you're going to renovate the bathroom, if you're going to, you know, fit out the basement to be livable space, if you're going to do any kind of work, think what's the little improvement? What's the next thing I could do and add now? Because they add up. They add up in comfort and they add up in reduced energy use. All right. Regarding those home energy assessments, I've had them over the years too. They're better now. They do more and they have a much better report. I'm sure there's probably more than one person who has their old report stuck in a dusty part of their email because it's kind of like a format. They've been redesigned to be more oriented towards decarbonization, not just heating systems. And they provide you a lot more information. They give you some more guidance on your next steps and linking you to resources. It's a much clearer report to help support you over time once that person leaves your house. So they're great. If you're like, oh, Edith, I've done that, not so great. They've gotten a little better. And some of the incentives have changed over time too. So if you didn't do something before because you weren't sure, like, I'm not sure I want to pay for some of that, especially on some of that air sealing and weatherization, the cost to homeowners have gone down. So you've done all that. The other resource I want to share with you is to get organized with Rewiring America's personal electrification plan. We call it the PEP. And it is a way to sort of load in that information that we've been talking about, and it will make you a whole plan. It kind of goes farther than that home energy assessment report because it looks at your whole house and it looks at more than just like the next couple of things. So it's free. You can sign up, make your account. It will live online. You can print it out. And they've got a lot of great supports in there. So if you haven't checked that out or you haven't used their calculator, which was very popular when we had the IRA incentives for homeowners, they've got this great personal electrification planner, and it's always getting a little better too. So I encourage you to check that out. I already talked about the Clean Energy Lives Here website. These are some of the kinds of things that they have. And I mentioned getting a coach. Nancy has been through the coach's course. A lot of other people in Massachusetts have too. And the Heat Smart Alliance has been building up a large cohort of coaches for some time. So there are people out there on a volunteer basis who want to help you think through this and who, nerd out on this stuff and are more up to date on the changes in incentives, the newer equipment, and what's happening with all of that. So get a coach. That might be through your town's sustainability team, or maybe you have a staff person in your town that helps homeowners. So check that out, or go over to the Heat Smart Alliance website and look under Request a Coach. This is a beginning listing of just the front of the alphabet. I think I cut it off at Lincoln for the number of towns where you can get matched up with a coach. They're out there. Use them. They can just be like, make you feel better about the direction you want to go in, because these are often big and more expensive decisions. Now, new through Mass Save is getting a heat pump consultation. These have been around for um, I think it's just 2 years that you can sign up. These are some of my colleagues from Abode. You go ring ring and you make your appointment with them and talk to them, and they help you think about your home. They're like, so you have a boiler, and how old is it, and how many square feet, and what floors, and do you have a finished basement? And they'll ask you some of those questions and help coach you to something specific around heating and cooling and adopting heat pumps. Uh, a great follow up from there, this is a beautiful thing, is they can also get help for looking at your quotes. If you go out and get quotes, which is always a good idea, there can be wide ranges in prices for reasons that are really hard to understand, especially because quotes sometimes look like this one with pictures and don't tell you a whole lot, or they're totally different from one installer to the next, or they use so many details you just do not have any idea what they're talking about. It can be so confusing. So if you've done a heat pump consultation, that's the way to then, once you have quotes, get a heat pump quote comparison and get kind of the just right amount of information that lines up. You see on this one, 3 different systems. This is the front page that's showing you like the net cost after available incentives, how they rank on their, what the carbon reductions are with that system, operating costs, and whether or not it's well sized for your home. And these are great. I really encourage you. It can be so dizzying to look at multiple quotes at once. So just to repeat it, you can take it from here. Finish your draft plan. Do that homework about lifespan and motivations and needs. Get some support in all the ways that I just talked about, and then name your next clear step. So if you've already been thinking about it, I want to know, especially if it's one of these. Here's our next poll. What is your clear next step? All right. Mass home energy assessment. Yes, for 2 of you. Checking ages. Yeah, it's all getting on there. All right. So far, nobody is ready to collect research questions or reports. All right. Schedule a heat pump consultation. Great. Great. They're very helpful. My colleagues are knowledgeable and kind and patient and so helpful. Great. So you know your next step. That's awesome. My work is done here for the 48 minutes that I had. We're going to open it up for Q&A, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. All right. Did I stop sharing?
Nancy,
Somebody
you're
give me a
mute.
thumbs up that it's gone. Okay. What do we have for questions?
Nancy's on mute.
I'm sorry, I said thank you very much when I was on mute, and I'll turn it over to Joel to handle the questions.
Thank you, and thank you, Edith. You have a knack for making some complex ideas simple. I like driving around the United States. That was, and if I was wondering, we got heat pumps. Could I include Canada in that tour of North America too at the same time?
I think Canada's lovely. Plan to go there in a few weeks.
Okay, well, we do have some, I would say, challenging questions for you. And I'll start with weatherization. We all want to have an airtight home, but the balance between weatherization and having fresh air in your house, how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, I would say for most homes, if they were built before 1980, which a lot of them are, very few of us are living in homes that are significantly newer than that. It's hard to tighten them up so much that you have to worry about fresh air. So something like a blower door test can really help you with that. It shows you how much your house is leaking and where. And, mass save weatherization is not going to put you into the so tight you are in trouble. You need to be down. So in my home, we were over 12 air changes per hour at pressure with the blower door running. and we got it down to 3. And I was part of an early demonstration project, and we just insulated and air sealed the crap out of this house everywhere that we could find. And we got it to perform about as good as what new construction would be, right? Because codes have gotten better along with those building materials and the techniques that I was talking about. And all those allow us to, at code, build houses that are at 3 air changes per hour or less. And it's really hard. And that's when you need to have an mechanical system that is always supplying fresh air. But we had to do a lot, way more than any sane person would do now. We only did that crazy stuff because we were part of a demonstration program and they were trying to figure out how much you could do to get to that point in a house that's 120 years old. But even if you do mass save plus some other extra, you're probably, with luck, approaching 5 air changes per hour, which means like having a good bath vent that directly vents, or a stove. Like when you turn on your stove, especially anybody who has a gas stove, you should always be running your vent, if it vents to the outside, to get rid of that stuff. Or crack a window if you have a gas stove. The indoor air pollution on those things is just bad, bad, bad. But it's actually hard. How could you tell if you were in that range? If you start seeing, the way you steam up a window in your bathroom, if you start seeing that in other places in your house and you didn't just cook like 12 batches of pasta nonstop all afternoon, that would be a sign that maybe your indoor air quality needs some more fresh air. But generally, if you're doing like normal levels of insulation and weatherization, like from Mass Save, all of our homes are so close to that ridiculous paper cup in their leakiness, it's really hard to make them tighten up. So I would just say not a big concern unless you're doing a lot of air sealing. And then the person that you're working with is probably going to be doing blower door tests and monitoring that and letting you know if you're getting to the place where more purposeful ventilation is needed.
Okay, good. So it's like the idea of sort of diagnostics too, of how you tell if you're having a problem, even though most people, it sounds like, will not have a problem. Yeah. Another one, 2 people have raised this issue of repair versus replace. Your presentation's about, when do you need to replace something? But obviously there's a carbon cost to manufacturing items, and so maybe your fridge, it's working, but it's not so efficient, or your furnace is working, but so it's that balance of when you decide to repair versus replace, and how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, with refrigerators, I don't know if it's the Department of Energy or the EPA. I guess the Department of Energy has a calculator. You can enter in, like, I have a Frigidaire model, blah, 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 from 1997. If I replace that with a new Energy Star one of similar interior square footage, what would I save on operating costs from energy? And it'll let you see the difference. Refrigerators get better all the time, like a lot of other appliances. I think if you're looking at anything that is approaching 50% the cost of a new piece of equipment, that's a good time to consider just going to the new piece of equipment. And the point about the embodied carbon, all the pollution that was created to make this piece of equipment, we should be using stuff up. Maybe not till the very last moment of its capacity. And maybe some things like gas stoves can have other benefits if we retire them a little bit early. But if you've got something that is a piece of equipment that is kind of young and healthy and operating well, I'm not suggesting that you go out and change it out right away. This is the idea of putting them in order and looking. And then you might say, like, yeah, I want to speed up this one. Or like, we don't have the budget for that one. I want to nurse that one along for as long as I can before we jump to that. So yeah, we should be using them up, but just calling it before they totally conk out.
Right.
So you want to avoid those emergencies.
Yeah. I know you're talking about the big ticket items, but I did hear once, it's actually true, but when you're talking light bulbs, that replacing an incandescent with a LED has a payback period of like a week or something.
Oh my God, I'm ready for this. An incandescent light bulb. Oops, this one's the incandescent. Uses 16 watts of electricity, or at cost $21 a year. And you wouldn't even make it through the year. And this is if you like, it's something like you never turned off. You would have to replace it about once a month. So $21 a year to operate it. Oh, where's my other one? Doesn't everybody have sample light bulbs next to your desk to talk about this stuff? Oh, God, I'm wrong. I was calling it. Okay. 160 watts, $131 a year to plug this in and leave it plugged in 24 hours a day for an entire year. And you'd have to replace it once a month. This one is $21 a year. This is the CFL. See, I have my little notes written on it. One bulb would last you the whole year and only cost $21. So yeah, if you've got incandescents, like absolutely, it is not worth using up an incandescent. That is one exception to the like, don't use it up. Even CFLs, especially in any lamp that gets used with any frequency, just go to an LED. Go straight there. That is one where there's been just like huge gains.
Yeah. And a bigger ticket item, furnaces, two questions about people living in old houses. Here's one of a 130-year-old renovated carriage house. Now, it sounds like you've dealt with older houses too. We have a lot of them here in Metro West. But it sounds like if for one of these two people, the installer said, oh, I can't do heat pumps in it. Your house, the ceilings are too high. So anyway, this general question about older houses, this person has two gas furnaces, 20-year-old gas furnaces. Another one has a boiler. But can heat pumps, I guess the question is, can heat pumps, or what's the most efficient system for these big old rambling Victorians with high ceilings? To put it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. So there's a difference between the heat pumps that were first introduced in New England and the ones we have access now. I see Paula's question about replacing an old heat pump that's 13 years old. A 13-year-old heat pump is probably a standard heat pump at single stage. It has on and it has off, and they're not that efficient. And below a certain temperature, often somewhere in the 30s or low 40s, it can't keep up because they were primarily built for air conditioning and a little bit of shoulder season support, but they can't do winters. Newer equipment, cold climate designed equipment, they've pushed the engineering in the last number of years to create something that could deal with a New England winter and not just be, an air conditioning bonus. And so they're much more capable. If you've had this conversation, let's say even 10 years ago, you might get a different response now because the equipment is better. There are more installers doing it. There are plenty of installers who will say, yeah, it's not going to work for your house. And that might be someone who just really wants to install boilers and furnaces because it's what they know and they're going to retire in a few years and they're not going to mess around with heat pumps. Or someone it's January and they're really busy and your house would be more challenging and they're like, yeah, it's really not going to work for you, as a way of like taking a pass on your project. They might also bid you a really high price just so you don't pick them if they're super busy and your house is more complicated. But there are plenty of installers out there who can respond to that. And coaches in your local program may have installers in your area that are known to them as, being interested in really doing that business and doing it well. High ceilings, I don't know that it's necessarily a problem. It can be challenging if you have a lot of little small rooms and you don't have room for ducts. Then there are some trade-offs and decisions to make. But you can also keep that system, especially if it's a younger existing system, and layer the heat pumps over top. And you can use the heat pumps when it gets, or use the existing fossil fuel equipment when it's in the really deep cold temperatures where heat pumps do get more expensive to run. You won't get as big of an incentive for mass save if you go for that dual fuel option versus full replacement of a fossil fuel system, but you can definitely choose that option, and you can find installers who will do that. And some installers would much rather sell you a furnace and a heat pump than just a heat pump. So keep that in mind too. This is where a coach can be really helpful in that quote comparison to help you evaluate that information and know what's what with more confidence.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of scheduling and working with installers, I've heard people say that heat pumps are hard to install in the dead of winter, not because they're busy or whatever, but because something about installing a heat pump in cold weather is harder. Is there any truth to that you've ever heard of?
I don't think so. Probably really hard to install anything anywhere around us right now because of all the snow we've got piled up in every possible place. But no, I don't think so.
Nothing technical about that. It would
I
be
don't think.
difficult. Okay. We've come to our hour, and I wanted one last question here for you. You talked about the 5 decisions made around the kitchen table that account for a high proportion of the U.S. climate pollution. I was wondering about a 6th decision, and that is who you vote for. And the reason is because, and this is another question comes, is, if you're all electrified, but your electricity is still coming from coal, oil, gas, versus renewable resources. So is there a political dimension to this of where you're going to get your electrons from?
In Massachusetts, we already have these state goals. We have the renewable portfolio standard. And there's people who are continuing to push to strengthen what we're doing, and that can matter. And right now, there is a proposal at the Senate. It's the Senate. Oh, somebody probably knows it and can put it in the chat who's following these things, what the name of the committee is that is looking at this. And there's a proposal that's had a fair amount of support that would back down our renewable portfolio standard, which is something that says each year our grid needs to get greener. And they're saying like, yeah, we shouldn't really do that anymore, blah, 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 blah. And let's save money on mass save. They're not looking at, there's some great materials you can look on this for the Green Energy Consumers Alliance. If you want to follow this, they have been posting some really informative analysis of the bills and clarity on what the action steps are. Again, that's the Green Energy Consumers Alliance. They're fantastic. And yeah, so I mean, Massachusetts has leaned in pretty well. We can always get better, and I don't think we should backslide. So calling the people who are in the state house representing us matters now. And certainly who we vote for at a national level matters. Our local representatives, I think, none of them voted for the repeals of the Inflation Reduction Act incentives that were so valuable for homeowners, or voted support the decision to stop wind farms that are 95% done and so close to supplying us with so much more clean energy for our grid. So those decisions do matter. Our state delegation, I think, is handling a lot of that pretty well, and our national leadership is really thwarting our efforts from the federal level. So those votes matter. The other thing I didn't talk about is adding solar. Even with the loss of the federal tax credit, there is a smaller state tax credit, and you still come out ahead with solar if you can put that in your roof. And if you can afford to pay for it up front, you will be ahead of your neighbor on your costs for years to come. The payback has generally gone up about 2 years without that tax credit. But that is still a super valuable thing to do if you can supply your own green energy. Somebody on the call's got a home battery. That was their favorite thing. That can be a really winning combination for resilience and independence, and low carbon for an individual homeowner if that's something that you can swing and your roof is suitable for it. Keep your eye out for balcony solar too. I think that's coming up. Some of our nearby states, Vermont and New York, have bills pending. I don't think Massachusetts is going to let them get too far ahead of us before balcony solar, plug-in solar. If you don't know about that, go take a quick Google on that. There's some exciting things happening for people whose roofs or who are renters can move ahead with solar in a way that wasn't available before.
Yeah, I've heard some neighbors who couldn't put solar bought into a distant solar farm to support the solar that was in a central.
Yeah, that's a community solar project, which
Oh, yeah.
is also a good option. There's we have all the technology we need.
Mhm.
It exists. And the prices and availability and skill in installing it is generally improving all the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I know we have some action items. We got to do better on our installation. I know here to make sure we follow through here. I'm going to return to Nancy Selvage for the final wrap up. Thank you very much, Edith.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to spend time with you all. Good questions, too.
Edith, this has been so valuable for folks that may think they know it all, for people acting as coaches, this is just a fabulous lesson in how to approach the problem and to help others.
So,
So,
one thing on what you said, Nancy, it's so hard to know it all because things are always changing and updating.
right,
I'm learning new stuff all the time. So, that's like, I mentioned something like this a couple times. If you got an answer a few years ago and it wasn't one that you could move forward with, you might check on it again.
got it. Yes, forever students. Thank you again.
And thank everybody for attending. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.